Today we will look at a contemporary subject: people leaving their nations for other nations. As at present, the US-Mexico border has a storm brewing. 10,000 migrant caravan is attempting entry to US. Unconfirmed reports said already 22 million immigrants are registered in the US. President Trump has made a policy statement that he wants to stop this. Chapter 10 of the book of Genesis in the Bible tells us how nations were formed. After Noah's flood, the earth had only Noah's family, Noah's 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and they brought forth the children. Genesis chapter 10 has a record of Noah's sons, grandsons, and great-grandchildren. When you look at any ancient historic record, you find that ancient towns and nations and regions had some of the names of the grandsons or great-grandsons of Noah cited. For example, Gomer, Ashkenaz are some of the names cited in ancient records, indicating how these grandsons and great-grandsons spread out to be the nations. Chapter 10 of the book of Genesis has the construction of the Tower of Babel. It also has a record of the formation of languages. Now, scientists have no explanation as to how languages were formed. The reason being, the theory of evolution cannot explain the formation of languages. Each language requires phonemes, grammatical structure, rules of grammar, all to come together rather than evolving bit by bit. For decades, the formation of languages has confused, surprised scientists, and it remains to be an enigma. Bible records that at the point the oligarchs of the time began to command the proletariat or the common people to construct a tower for their glory, God confused their languages. How did he confuse the languages? By giving them different languages. Always when a conglomeration of people is in one place, the powerful, the oligarchy, will begin to tell the other people what to do for their glory. In Genesis chapter 10, we have the record of a man called Nimrod, who is called a mighty hunter in the face of the Lord. It suggests antagonism towards the Lord. He became a great city builder, and he built the great city of Nineveh. Or at that time came this push to use the majority of the people for the glory of a few rulers to construct a tower to reach heaven. And God watched it, and God's decision was this: if all the people of the earth are in one place, few will arise in power, oppress others, and demand the glory for themselves and abuse and utilize the normal people for their projects. So what did God do? He actually divided the earth into classrooms or classes. Each class was given a language. So obviously, those who were of a certain language kind grouped together and began to spread from the Tower of Babel to other nations. If you read my book, a little commentary on the first 10 chapters of the Bible, written in easy style, especially for parents to read with their kids between 6 to 14, and certainly above 14, you can easily understand the scientific, geological, archaeological, historic evidences for the veracity, the truth of Genesis chapters 1 to 10. And in my book, in lesson 45 and lesson 45, 44 and 45, I describe how the nations were formed, how languages were formed, and how the nations dispersed. So I take up this point that each language group that understood each other began to spread to different continents and areas with the language that they now had. That's how nations were formed. That's how language groups went to their destined ends of the earth. There is also another sign in the constellar figurations and astronomical calculations that people have been doing, looking at the night skies. The names given to many of the constellar arrangements are to be sighted only in the Middle East in the night sky. Therefore, we know people took the shape of the constellar signs with the same names as were practiced at that distant time, probably around about 2150 BC, when Babel happened. So when we look at the present scenario of nations leaving their boundaries, one begins to see that it is engineered. Trouble is created in one's nation, either by people themselves or at the instigation of a global Nephilim, a global oligarchy that wants to destabilize nations. So when trouble begins in a nation, the rich and the affluent immediately begin to leave that nation, making that nation vulnerable to all kinds of players and predators. Then I find movement of civilians across borders begin to be engineered and nations have conflict. When migrants enter into a given nation, that nation goes into conflict, and the nation they leave is also in conflict, and this helps global players to come into rule or interfere in the nations. Each nation was created in the image of God, so only God is sovereign in a nation. Only God is true King of the nation. We know on the cross of Calvary, Jesus Christ died and sprinkled his blood on every nation to be saved. So we have to watch this drama of migrants crossing boundaries at the behest of global conspiracy, well organized to enter into other nations, making nations fragile, making the nation state fluid, and allowing international manipulators to interfere in the affairs of a nation. This is not the will of God, and it is our responsibility to pray that every nation will be safe and we begin to use the resources we have been given in our nation carefully and justly. So when the super rich in a nation or the super powerful in a nation begin to harass people, oppress them, treat their own people unjustly, you open the doors of that nation for others outside players to come and interfere. The same thing happens when global investors invest and purchase national resources at their pleasure. The stock market opens avenues for global players to invest in a country's resources and purchase them as they want. This destabilizes the country and this weakens the nations. Isaiah 14 identifies Satan, Lucifer, as the one who weakens nations. This is the cause of the next global debt trap that is already on us. We know in 2008 when there was a grain crisis and a global debt crash, it was not global really, only some countries were affected. It was a debt of about 80 trillion US dollars. As it is, and at that time they managed to do certain repairs and just put some bandages and plasters superficially and thwart the debt crisis. But as of now, the world's debt is about 270 trillion US dollars. Also, we now know this has opened the gate for unseen players to play into money market and financial instruments, and it is reported the black market money or the black currency that does not go through governments exceeds more than 50% of all currency circulating. So this is why a crash nationally and crash globally has been engineered so that few super players who always plan the global problem we can take matters into their hands. It is reported now that China, Russia, Iran and China are lobbying at the behest of the International Monetary Fund to launch a parallel international currency that would compete with the dollar. The spoke in the wheel has been President Trump, who has taken policies to strengthen the dollar, as it was planned to weaken the dollar and move all nations to an international currency and a standard credit rating system rather than paper currency or national currencies to be in play. What was engineered was badly derailed by the policies of President Trump that has made the dollar strong again. So now we expect the final drama to evolve and play out when the policies in the international market will try to put down the dollar and put down national currencies and move to a merged currency, where the global players will have the final say over all the resources of every nation. In the last book of the Bible, Revelation chapter 13, this is described. If you want to know that God knew it all and God has predicted this, please read Revelation chapter 13. If you have been an atheist, agnostic up to this time, as I was before 1971, it is time to read these chapters in the Bible. You also will do well to read my book, Genesis. I also have another book articulating and describing how this end-time phenomena are moving into an economic battle that will manifest as a political battle, which was known as Armageddon. And the word Armageddon comes from the Bible again. In Revelation chapter 16, the valley of Megiddo in the northern part of Israel is considered to be the meeting place of four great world powers. That will be in another talk. Thank you for listening. If you want to get in touch with us in Sri Lanka, please give a phone call to 077-151-2801. If you are abroad, make it plus 94 77 151 2801. Our website is www.apeksha-lanka.com. This will appear on the clip shortly. Thank you.